Hi guys, I want you to, we are right at the point where we now need to talk about what do we do that now we've reached tier three. So where do we go from there? So let's look at this and see. So we have Egbert's twin sister Egberta, and she has very similar performance to Egbert. You can see low reading scores, but she doesn't have any behavioral issues, etc. She's a cooperative child. She tries real hard, not disruptive. A long time ago, she probably never would have been referred. Boys tend to be externalizers, and girls tend to be internalizers when it comes to behavior. And Egberta is a perfect case of that. And boys, it's like the squeaky wheel gets the grease, so boys get their needs met a lot more often than the girls do, just because they're externalizers and they're disruptive. Okay, so we can see here with Egberta's stuff that she's at the similar level, about 11 points behind her peers, and so she has to learn 2 words of growth of words correct per minute per week within 20 weeks to catch up to her peers. And if she does that, 20 weeks she'll catch up. But we do know now that most often she's not going to do that. What we do see is this. See the red line? We do an intervention and she might get a little bit better, but then she drops right back off. So after 5 weeks, we see that behavior. So let's change the intervention right there. So we're going to move her to tier two. This was a tier one with classroom interventions. At tier two, then we see she's not making the much progress either. So see, we see how that's going, and she's actually getting more behind her peers. So after another 5 weeks, we're going to move her to tier three. Now, the things about tier three, remember, it's the most intensive intervention point. It's supplemental to the tier one and tier two. So we're just adding more to it. But let's say after another 10 weeks, this is what we see with Egberta. And we might have changed the intervention along the line, um, but we still see that she didn't make great strides. She did not intervene. She did not respond appropriately to the interventions. In other words, so we see that here, right? So we see these things here: major performance differences. She's not growing as fast as she could. We have ruled out intellectual disability as being an issue, but so we think it's a learning disability of some kind. Tier three, we've increased the intensity, it was supplemental, we've increased the frequency, and reduced the groups to 1-on-1 or 1-to-2 or 1-to-3. So no more than 1-to-3 in the very small groups. Important points for tier three. Tier three. It is the most important phase of RTI. If a student doesn't make progress here, then we need to do something else, probably specially designed instruction. So tier three is if it was carried out with fidelity, then we can rule out that that was beneficial for her. So here's the summary. Remember, tier three is for those that don't respond appropriately to tier one and tier two. It's very small groups, 1-to-1 or 1-to-3 at the max. Minimum amount of time is 30 minutes per day in a small group or individually. You monitor progress twice a week instead of once a week or once every 3 months or whatever it is. And this is the interventionist is outside the classroom person, a specialist. Now then, special education eligibility and determining the using RTI. Now we can say with very good confidence that the student has nothing in general education that we're doing would be effective for her. Her skills are dropping off. There's a pattern of skills and deficits and strengths. And so we need to do further evaluation so we can enhance her instruction through specially designed instruction. So what do we need to do now? We need to make a referral for an FIE. The FIE is what we do when we make a referral from our RTI Tier 3. We don't make a referral for special education, we make a referral for an FIE. We must obtain parental consent, we must conduct the evaluation, hold an IEP meeting, determine if they're eligible, determine if they have placement, and then get parental consent for placement. Two things really important to know. There is a provision in law to override a non-consent by a parent for the FIE, but there is no ability to override a parent's non-consent for placement. Really important elements. Okay, so in FIE, you must assess the child in all areas related to the suspected disability. You don't have to have a specific test. If you have data to rule that out, then you can just move forward. And you'll see a matrix here in just a second that I've used in the past to rule out certain things. But before we get to that matrix, I want to talk about the process just for a moment. The process is that it is a formula for access to services. A plus B equals C. If you have to have an A and you have to have B in order to receive C. A is for the condition of a disability from the 13 different disability categories. We'll talk about those in just a couple minutes. Then B must be an identified educational need for specially designed instruction. If you have those two things, then you get C. If you look down here at here, if you can have a condition, but you might not have an educational need. For example, if a student has a health issue like asthma, and they're appropriately treated and medicated appropriately, they might not need specially designed instruction. They have a condition of a disability under OHI, but they don't have educational needs, so they don't receive services. C. The same thing here is if a student doesn't have a condition of a disability, one of the 13, but has some needs, you have to serve them through RTI, not through IDEA services. So that's really important. This formula is very important. These are the 13 conditions of disability. They include speech and language impairment, specific learning disability, other health impairment, intellectual disability, emotional disturbance, autism, orthopedic impairments, visual impairments, auditory impairments, deafblindness, traumatic brain injury, and multiple disabilities, and finally, non-categorical early childhood. That's Texas's version of the developmental disability. Most other states go to age 9. Texas limited its developmental disability to age 5, non-categorical early childhood. At 6, you must have one of the other conditions firmly in place and to meet the continued need for specially designed instruction. Educational need includes these things: academic, social, emotional, behavioral, physical safety, etc. This is not an exhaustive list, so it can be more, but it's not only academic. Very important concept to remember. And C is specially designed instruction to meet the unique needs of the student uh, with, with the condition of a disability and to make progress and access the general education curriculum. This is the timeline, very confusing, but let's make it simple. So let's talk about FIE timeline. Within 45 school days of when the parent signs the consent, the FIE must be completed. Then, once the IEP, once the FIE is completed, you must have an IMP in place within 30 calendar days of the FIE. Then you must review that IEP annually, and then every 3 years you must have a reevaluation to continue eligibility for services. So that's the simple, basic timeline for you guys to remember. This is the matrix I was mentioning before. I use this to rule out anything that is not needing additional assessment. So, an FIE must have information from the teacher. Most of this information is going to come forward in the RTI documentation, and classroom teacher information comes from that. Classroom observation most likely comes from that. And then there might be other information, stuff from parents, other teachers, etc., etc. So you would just collect that information as you move forward. The evaluation, as we learned from Ardman, is the foundation from what we build all programs. You must have an evaluation. You cannot choose services based on no evaluation. All services are based on evaluation. That's the foundation. And the ARD committee are the people that determine if a student has an eligibility for services. They establish educational need. They develop goals and objectives. They determine if specially designed instruction and related services are necessary to meet the unique needs of the student. The educational diagnostician does not determine eligibility. That is determined by the IEP team. So educational needs and services is part 2 of the IEP process. And remember that IEP is FAPE-based, free and appropriate public education, that special education means specially designed instruction at no cost to the parents to meet the unique needs of a child with a disability, including these things here. At home, hospital classes, institutions, those kind of things. Who's the required member of the IEP team or the ARD committee? Remember, they are the general education teacher of the child, the special education teacher of the child, administrator, the parent, and someone to interpret the evaluation results. Those are the required members. That's the minimum amount of people that need to be involved in in a duly constituted IEP meeting. IEP is a written statement, either electronically or hard copy, and must be developed, reviewed, and revised in a meeting in accordance with the special education laws. It must include ways that the student is engaged in and making access in their general education curriculum. You must have present levels of performance and where the strengths and weaknesses of the child are located. Must have measurable annual goals, and those these are some more things that how that will be met. Specially designed instruction, goals and objectives. We're going to look at a few of these things. This is what a good goal or objective would look like. It can be counted or measured or seen or heard, and it contains performance criteria. Just make significant progress on the STAR test or in the grade level curriculum is not appropriate. So this must be included. Now, modification supports we've talked about before, but let's just quickly review them. Accommodate is like differentiated instruction, how a student accesses or demonstrates that they know something. It doesn't change the content. It provides equal access to learning and opportunity to demonstrate knowledge, and it varies in intensity and degree. Modification can only be done if a student has an IEP. It changes what is learned or demonstrated what is learned. It changes benchmark. It changes number of concepts. In other words, it changes the content. Adapt is the same thing as accommodate. It's differentiated instruction. It's more like equipment, less than strategies, like an adapted cockpit. We must have a statement of supplementary aids and services on either to meet the needs of the child or on behalf of the child. Training for you as a teacher that to implement a specific strategy is a related service on behalf of the child. So you're empowered to ask for training. Then we determine the least restrictive environment, where that student is going to be placed to the maximum extent appropriate with children without disabilities is the best way. Before you decide where, you have to know what. The IEP must be in place. And these are some instructional arrangements. It goes from the least restrictive to the most. So we've put the puzzle together, and hopefully by putting the puzzle together, we have come up with a complete program of services for that student that is struggling and has not met according to the RTI process and meets the eligibility criteria for specially designed instruction. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me at any time. Thank you very much. You have a great day.